I have 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. I see Mary Beth is recording, so that's good. But I didn't print an agenda. Well, I'm pretty sure the first thing is.
If you want, Michelle, I'll share the screen and put the agenda up. How's that?
Oh, yeah, I can write it down real quick. I think the first thing is, so we called to order. Okay, so let's go through the list of things. This meeting is being recorded. This meeting is being held remotely for the purpose of the emergency order issued by Governor Baker.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This last week's, that's the last agenda, not this week's.
Yep, that's
you're right. Let me fix that.
Sorry.
The people participating remotely are Michelle Bailey, Anna Cizik, Dana Alera, Peter Walczyk, and Michelle Horrigan. And those are the only members currently here. Okay, so if people would like to participate in making a comment, they're welcome to do that. Our policy allows you to speak for 3 minutes. We'll try to limit this time to 20 minutes so that we can get on with the rest of our agenda. If you would like to address the committee, you can click on participants, click on your name, and then click on raise your hand, and you can be recognized. So, and now David Toledo is participating in the meeting remotely.
And do we know if Mahala is here?
I do not see her, okay. So
just curious.
But it's being recorded.
No, I don't.
I did not see anybody raise.
I don't see Mahala in the participants. No.
Yeah. So, and I don't see anybody raising their hand either. Give you guys another second if you'd like to raise your hand, which is, nobody has to speak, but if you want to, we certainly want to make that opportunity available to you. All right, fantastic. So after that, do we have Craig? Yes. So Anna, do you want to tee this up and then have Craig talk, or how do you want to do that? This is the thing about the cameras and stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Somehow, yeah, that's Mary Beth. Do you mind not sharing your screen for a minute, or no?
We're good now. I'm good now. I've got it.
Good? Okay.
Okay. Oh, that's better. Okay. So this came to us through Craig. Thank you, Craig, for bringing it to our attention. We have had a reading of it in the policy subcommittee last week. Craig presented there at that time. And what it is an opportunity to sort of augment the viewing capacity for sports, especially, but potentially other activities. But sports was sort of the primary focus of the presentation. And there's a service that is being made available at a heavy discount, an unusually heavy discount this time, that Craig thinks would be really supportive for our viewers. Because of all the density requirements and restrictions, it will be even harder for parents to watch kids who are playing sports. So he came to us with a proposal to allow this equipment to be installed at the high school, both in the gym and on the main field, the grass field. The cost to us, I think he said, would be something like $2,500. It was a 70. I think I'll let him speak to the particulars, but my memory is it was a 75% reduction of the usual startup cost, and then the ongoing fee to families, I believe, is something like $5 a month in terms of subscription. So with that, you would be able to, view athletic events your kids might participate in, or if you're just interested in watching. And I think Craig, what he said was the real advantage is it doesn't have an operator in some ways, and it sort of tracks the movement of the field. It's sort of like a smart camera whereby it knows when motion is happening, and that's sort of what it's tracking on the field. So it's a relatively new technology, but a lot of districts have started using it. So he brought it to us. We had a conversation in policy about it. We did talk about it at that time. We did talk about whether or not it was duplicated by HWCAM. That did come up in our meeting, and I know that's been presented to us as well. So we had a pretty thorough conversation about it, and coming out of it, policy decided that we would support the measure. So by a 3-0 vote, the policy subcommittee wanted to bring it to the full committee's attention.
Mahala, can you mute? Mahala.
And so we asked Craig
Mahela.
to
Sorry,
come.
Mahela, you mute?
I think she's good now.
Okay.
So anyway, so Craig is here
Thank you.
tonight to talk a little bit more about the particulars. So we're bringing it to the full committee's attention for a possible vote. Because if I'm understanding the timeline correctly, Craig, if we wanted to do this, we should move on it quickly. So with that introduction, I might pass it to you if you wanted to talk about any particulars or advantages about what this does, and maybe specifically address how it's new or different than existing services. Okay, Craig, I think you're muted.
No, he's not muted, but we can't hear him.
Craig, we're hard to hear you.
He might have a
Is your-
problem with his
Give up
microphone.
your laptop.
It's not showing him muted, but it's,
Yeah.
we don't have audio.
And Mary Beth, you are frozen.
All this alien technology out of Area 51 still has glitches.
While we're waiting on Craig to be able to speak, what about what HWCAM, have we talked to them about this proposed camera and how it might interfere with, what they're doing and how it could possibly, be different? Because I know it was in a proposal for 2021. So I was just curious, with HWCAM, have we talked to them? Because they do all kinds of services for us for free. And I don't want to interfere with HWCAM.
We did receive a letter from them today, Stacy, which is now in the packet, and I did email everybody, but it came in today. So yeah, we can consider that.
And
Well,
I-
that's
I know-
what I'm referring to.
Oh, okay.
And I know Craig's prepared to speak to that this evening, and I can certainly add information as well if the committee would like further information. Craig,
And-
how's your audio now?
No.
No? Craig, can you just try turning your video off and see if that helps?
Oh, but he actually is on mute. Now he actually is muted. There we go.
Just so others know, the HWCAM question did come up in policy as well, even prior to getting the letter. So I think I'll let Craig, I feel more comfortable if Craig talked about why this is different and why we felt it was different enough to move forward. I don't want to speak incorrectly about what HWCAM does or doesn't do existing, but just so people know, we did talk about it at policy.
No.
Say something. No.
No.
Is there any chance you have headphones plugged in that are with a speaker? Okay.
I'm wondering if he wants to try the reverse and plug in headphones and see if that works.
See. Right. I can probably take a stab at some of the information.
Do we want to skip an item while he,
Yeah, we could try. Why don't we try? We can move down
Okay.
to the next item, and we'll give.
The visits. Do we want to talk about the visits today?
Sure. I do see Craig's back. Do you want to give it one more try, Craig? No, we're still having audio trouble. Try logging all the way out and then back on and see how that works.
Okay. So we'll go over the site visits from today. So I went to Winthrop. I was able to see every classroom. They're not using the library area this year. It is set up, however, for the library and the art room. It is set up, however, to be a teacher workspace or also a TA workspace. So if they're needing to check in with kids who are working remotely, they have a space to go to. They have set up the isolation room in the nurse's office. It's very stark. And it puts, the kids to one side and then kids who are sick to another side, or kids who are getting treatment to another side. So that's very safe. Obviously at Winthrop, they have a preschool. So some of those kids are still needing toileting. They have placed signs over the area with some directions from the nurses so that that can be done by the TAs that are there. They also have, so that not more than 2 students are ever in the restroom at a time. They're putting up a magnet system so that kids can say, I'm not their specific name, but there's a student in, there's a student out, so that they can minimize that. They have 6-foot spacing decals on the floor. All the rooms were very clean, and actually Mrs. Shediak said that this was a real opportunity for a lot of teachers to sort of just purge that stuff that they've been holding on to for a long time. They didn't need to get additional storage because they have a lot of storage in the music room. And then for accessible storage, they're using the gym, or half of the gym. And half of the gym has been reserved for, somebody needs to take an activity break. For the smaller classrooms, they have put tape on the floor that shows where kids can go and have space to move and have a little bit of a movement, especially in the preschool area. And I was actually floored by the size of the kindergarten rooms that at their school, and they have their own ability to use the restroom right there in the room. So they have ready, easy access to that. So it looked clean. The teachers have clearly set up their rooms with a lot of thought and care. All of the hand sanitizers were down low where the kids could get them when you walk in the room. All of the PPE is there. It looks very safe, and it looks like people have really put their heart into doing their job this year. So does anybody else want to talk about theirs? Go ahead, Anna.
I can talk about it. If Mary Beth wants to make me the host, I have pictures all queued up. I could screen share if anyone wants to see pictures.
Cue them up. Why not?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I think a picture in this case will be worth 1,000 words. So if you want to make me the host.
Setting.
All right, let's see if I can. Who can share? No, that's not what I want. Okay. Can everybody see that tile? Yeah, we're good. All right. So I was up at the high school. Principal Tracy met me there and gave me a tour of the whole building. And I will echo Michelle's comments. I have never physically seen the building as clean, nor smelled the building as clean. Like there is visceral evidence of cleaning. And it was really funny. So this is sort of becoming, so when you come in to the floor, there are little social distancing squares everywhere you go. And kind of funnily, it took me a couple takes to get a picture because the floor has so much shine on it. The glare was blocking the camera. I had to work to get it. So the pathway idea here is that students are only lining up kind of like a car. We're going to drive on the right. So students are only going one directional. There's social distancing spacers everywhere you go. There's sanitizer upon entering the building. I think I counted 7 or 8 sanitizer stations right on the front door. Everything's very well marked, very clean. This is what sort of a typical classroom setup in some ways looks like with the new desks. This one was sort of in process. I have a lot of classroom images just to give you a sense. This is sort of right outside facing the parking lot. It's another angle. So everything's 6 feet apart. and pretty well marked, pretty obvious. And the distance between the teachers and the students is more like 10 feet apart, so they're not feeling crowded to each other. This is pretty consistent in the classrooms. At the entrance of every classroom is another little sanitization station. So right when you come in, there's more sanitizer, there's wipes, there's tissues, there's masks for anyone who might be missing something. And a lot of classrooms actually have them on both sides of the room, to be honest. So there's no shortage of supply. Here's another classroom, a little more Spartan looking, but you get a sense of preparation and cleanliness. Signs everywhere, no reminders will go left unheard. This was the bathroom log that had been going on. So you see there's a date, a time, the deep cleaning, and then multiple tours checking off who's doing it, so on and so forth. These are posted outside every room and every bathroom. They turned some of the bathrooms into faculty and staff only, because typically there's only, I think, one, he said, faculty bathroom, but obviously that's difficult when people are kind of spread out. So they've turned some of the regular student bathrooms into faculty only bathrooms, and those are noted as well. For instances where there might be a regular teacher and that perhaps a second teacher's coming in, some sort of classroom share. So, here you have a regular teacher's desk, but then there's a secondary desk for an additional teacher or an aide who might come in. So even within teacher to teacher, they're not sharing the same desk. I don't know if that makes sense. I tried to capture that. So this is sort of like an auxiliary desk for teachers. This is the cafeteria, which again, I've never seen it so spick and span, so clean. What he said is they've outlined desk spaces for 90 students was the number they used, and their intention is to have 3 rounds of lunch. So 3 times 90 is about 270. That gets through the entirety of the cohort. And lunch will be half an hour, and then there'll be a break. Everything will be cleaned. Everything will get reset. Everything will be put away, and then they'll bring the next group in. He also talked a little bit about dismissal by last name. So there'll be groups of students. And I think he said, based on dismissing, A through, this may not be totally accurate, but like A through J happens first. And then they move to where they need to go. And then there's a 2-minute pause for everyone to get where they need to get. And then, K through R will go. And so they'll move in shifts. So at any time in the building, there are never more than 90 people in motion. I hope that I captured that accurately. I did not make a chart, but that was my understanding of what he said. This is sort of the existing teacher's lounge. It's not really going to be used for anything right now, but it's still there. This was a great action shot. So this is one of our new electrostatic cleaners, and I have double action. They were actually in the process of doing it, so I couldn't resist taking a picture of our hardworking staff there. So 2 different models, same idea. They're electrostatic. They're sort of fogging and misting, and they can walk around and carry them. So that was actually pretty cool to see in action. This is the art room, and Principal Tracy described some of the challenges of certain spaces that are usually very communal, that are really difficult to make communal right now. And some of these tables need to be bigger. So there's the art room. One question, and I have this sort of as a general question for the superintendent about the district, is storage. So there's a lot of furniture in places that you wouldn't expect it. He said they tried to make use of spaces that wouldn't typically have had students. So I believe this was an old health room. It's an interior room. It doesn't have an outer window. So of all rooms to kind of turn into storage, this room made logistical sense because it didn't have a window anyway. And the ventilation in this room wasn't great. So it's not intended to have students or staff in there regularly. But storage is definitely a problem. There's a couple places like that. This is the library. This has been set up a little differently, sort of as an auxiliary classroom. So you see you've got some technology, some desks spread around. And the idea here is that it can be obviously a workspace for students, but also sort of a substitute overflow room, he said. So if a sub was coming in and they didn't want to go into the main classroom, you could potentially be in this space instead. More storage in yet another part of the building. So I definitely want to have a conversation about storage and where we're putting stuff and how we're going to manage that. And I think that is my last picture that I took from the high school. I will stop the share. You guys can see that. Do I need to make you the host again, Mary Beth?
If you could do that, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Ooh, before I forget.
All right, who would like to go next? Go ahead, Michelle Oregon.
Hello. I was able to go to the Bucharest School today, and Ben first showed me Linda McMahon's kindergarten class. And those are our, our most, they're all our prized possessions, but the new ones coming into the school. And I'll tell you, Linda's done a great job, as all the other teachers have at Bucher. It was sparse, but it wasn't dystopian. It reminded me of when I was a young girl in school. The desks apart, a little bit further apart than what we had, but still very rows. There's some special furniture which will promote social distancing, which was great. Ben did share with me a portable desk, which was awesome. The students can sit on it. The little ones can sit on it and use a flat top as a desk surface. So Linda can take the kids outside and other teachers can take the young ones outside and do some outdoor classroom teaching, which is great. Ben showed me the air systems in all the classrooms, which have new filters that were replaced over the weekend. They run 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. With airflow, fresh airflow coming in consistently throughout that time. And as the weather changes, you can adjust the temperature. If you want it to be 35 degrees in there, you can. Obviously, we won't do that, but we can have that as a possibility. Not 35, but if it needs to be cooler. As Anna stated, the one-way decals are being put down over the next 2 days in Bucher. Touchless water faucets are being installed over the next 2 days. There were touchless hand sanitizers on every wall, and they also have portable hand sanitizers which will be put outside. So when the kids come in from recess, they can use that, which was great. I was impressed with keeping everybody, staff and teachers, safe. Chris Petro's area has a plexiglass partition that was added to her desk. A frosted window which connects her office to the remote isolation room will be replaced with a clear window so she can look into it, as well as on the nurse's side where you'll take care of scrapes and everything else. A door is being replaced with a window so that there'll be 2 sets of eyes on the kids that are waiting in isolation to be picked up. That was, I thought that was really impressive. I saw a room that was windowless prior to pandemic. They already had it set up to have a duct system to allow fresh air in. So they just replaced the filter in that, which was really interesting because it was already in place. The cleaning logs, as Anna noted, were posted outside the bathrooms. And one thing Ben shared with me was one of the teachers had a concern about, she didn't think that the bathrooms were being cleaned the last 2-3 weeks. And what happened was the custodians you clean the bathrooms when the kids are in the school. So the teachers were not using just the teachers' bathrooms, they were also using the kids' bathrooms. So once that was brought to the attention of Ben, he alerted the custodians, and that has been rectified, that problem, which is great, talking, communicating, solving problems, which is huge. Another thing that Ben brought up to me today, which is a good way for me to segue into, to talk about this, is the principals, elementary principals were talking today, and their thoughts or their concern was that the kids are coming back to school, depending on the metrics being good, early, in the next 2 weeks. We have a PD scheduled for the 9th of October. So the kids will just be in school, and then we have a PD day. So PD. So I don't know if Mary Beth, if that's something we want to, talk about now, or have you look into it? And I know we'll probably have to talk with the union. It is in the contract, but something we can maybe talk about, because that is a concern that should be addressed. If the kids are just coming back, we don't want to break any of the good momentum that could be happening. Let me see, there's one other thing that I had here. Nurse's office cleaning logs, I think. Oh, I know, this was great. The cafeteria has been transformed into the teacher's lounge, which was a huge open space for the teachers to have some space to get their work done, as well as socially distant from their peers, co-workers, and talk and share on things. So it was important. Again, everybody was taken care of. So that's my report.
David, do you want to do the other elementary school?
Sure. I went over to Cutler today, and I wasn't quite sure why we were going in. And I expressed that I actually met Tom Gary there. He happened to be there. So he came over for the walk. And, when I ran into Jen, I basically said the same thing. I'm like, I'm not really sure why I'm here. And she was actually really, really excited that I was there. And she's like, well, let me show you, show you around and show you what we're doing. And it was really nice. Her enthusiasm was fantastic. What am I going to tell you? The place was clean, and there weren't that many desks in the room. I do think that this opportunity of starting remote gave them a chance to sort of finish up some things on their checklist. I mean, everything looked great. It looks like the teachers are really trying to really make the best of the situation, right? And one thing that we were talking about that sort of came up a few times, and I know I'm in some ways I'm not giving Cutler the justice it deserves because it really did look great. But the fact that there are there's about 20 students that actually are in the building right now, and that some plans that were that were sort of being made, like just sort of how they're going to drop kids off in the morning. With having 20 kids there, they sort of realized, hey, maybe this isn't going to work the way I planned and this would be better. So it's sort of acting like a soft opening a little to realize, to really nail down plans once we do move, pivot back into that, hybrid schedule. And, the one thing I asked Jen while I had her there was how she feels about the transition. Sort of, it's been a rough few days for all of us. I mean, it's been a great few days in a lot of ways, but it's a big learning curve. And I'm like, is it something that we should be nervous about as soon as we sort of start hitting our stride, 2 or 3 weeks from now, we're now moving back into the building? And she's like, no, everybody wants everyone back in the building, and they're ready. And all this is doing is really making it more clear about how much we want the kids back in the building. So it was really, really probably what I got out of it the most and made me feel the best was just how much that they've really been realizing that they want the kids back. And, one thing that we sort of discussed a little bit was the fact that, we know that we'll inevitably, most likely 99% chance that we're going to have to pivot back to, to remote at some point. And the fact that we had to do it now and sort of, had a couple of weeks to plan it, we'll be much better prepared for when that actually comes. But, everyone feels really comfortable and confident about making that pivot back into the classroom, which makes me feel good because, right now, we've all been to Cutler, or at least most of us have been to Cutler, and it looks as good as Cutler's ever going to look right now. So yeah, they really did a fantastic job over there. So, and they're excited for the kids to come back.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Dina, can you tell us about how Miles River looked and any safety things that you saw there?
Sure, absolutely. And I will be brief because I think there were a lot of things that were very similar to what Anna showed in her picture show. And I did take pictures, but I didn't cue them up. But there are a lot of the similar signage was everywhere, similar hand sanitizers around the building. So one thing that was different that I don't think anyone else mentioned, at the middle school, they had enacted a new protocol for parents who needed to come into the building if they needed to drop something off or pick up a student. And there's sort of an airlock at the entrance there at the middle school. And they had set up a new procedure where the parents actually would be buzzed in, but only into that first part of the airlock, and be able to communicate through the intercom so that if they didn't need to come into the building, for example, if they needed to just drop something off for a student, it would be dropped on a table in that airlock. Or if, let's say, a student was being dismissed, a student could be dismissed to them in that airlock. So that was something different that I didn't hear from other schools, but it seemed like a good solution and limiting the number of people in the building. I did tour the bathrooms specifically. It was very clean. And like Anna, I also saw a custodian actually actively cleaning while I was there. Everything was quite clean. I did also get to hear a little bit about the lunch plan, which is going to involve a tent outside, at least while the weather allows for it, which really sounded like a a real nice opportunity for students to be able to eat outside. The cafeteria is also set up if weather is a factor. So the cafeteria is set up similar to the way that Anna demonstrated it. I also saw the cleaning logs and took pictures of those just like Anna did. And also the nurses station. I think a couple of people mentioned that, that they had reimagined the nurses station to allow the nurse to sort of pre-screen students quickly so that they could be isolated if they had something like a fever, and then treated differently if obviously they were there for a splinter or a bloody nose or something that's different than a potential COVID symptom. There were, to Anna's point, there were, sounds like less, but still storage was a concern. And being taken care of and being handled, but sounded like it was a challenge. So.
Awesome. So it was great. It was great to be able to walk through the building and see everything being done. It was clear that lots of thought had been put into every procedure, every process, every step of the way. Even the tents at Winthrop had these orange protectors on it, not to protect the ropes on the tents, but because there were some students at Winthrop who had some vision issues, so that they could be safe. So it was clear that there was a lot of thought put into safety and cleanliness, and then a lot of heart put into getting the rooms ready. And I just wanted to mention, I think it's Miss Landry's room. Is some of you might have remembered when we went on the tour, she had been asked to move her room last year. She had to move again this year, but she had made these like plexiglass dividers on the desk. She had cushioned stools, which you can't have any fabric. So she went out and she got clear plastic shower curtains, and she made plastic covers. So it's like your old grandma that has a plastic cover on her couch. So now it's completely safe and washable and can be sanitized, but still has that comfort that I have a cushion in the room. So I just wanted to give a shout out, because that one there was a lot of work put into that, and she put a lot of heart into it. All of them were fantastic, but that one I was like, wow, that's some real DIY classroom stuff going on there. So thank you for the opportunity.
Can I just add quickly, Kathy O'Shea was there, and I think I was there at around 3:45. And on the way out at 4:30, I happened to see her mother and father. So I sat and chatted with them for a good half hour, and she unsolicited, but it's a mom, but I'll take it anyway, because we're all, moms. She said, Kathy, she's there sometimes till 8:30 at night. So that is just an example of the teachers we have in this district. Sorry, Kathy, if you're on and I'm embarrassing you, but you deserve it after so many, close to 30 years of service. So that's just an example of what teachers we have in this district. So thank you to all who've made this possible.
All right. Thank you. So Craig, let's see how it's working.
Did that work?
Oh, I thought you were going to sing or something, but yes, it did work.
Listen, you would fire me faster than you could imagine if I ever sang. That's not something we do in public around here. But thank you for the
Let's go
photocopy.
through the cameras first, and then we can have the athletic update.
Sure. So regarding the cameras, this technology has been around for a couple years, mostly in states that are, draw 10, 15,000 people to a game and all that stuff. Not really up in cozy New England, right? But this started becoming more of a reality early last year when it got brought to our league. They had a salesman come and pitch to one of our schools, and they gave the presentation. It was $7,500 at the time for what they were offering, and we really didn't need it at that time. And then the more, and then COVID happened. And then in early July, I started talking to people around our school saying, look, we could conceivably have sports without fans for a while, right? If you look around the colleges and the pros, and you can only gather with 50 people at a time in a space outside the participants. It really started becoming a reality. So we started putting the pedal down on seeing what this program could do for us now, in the immediate here and now. And not only did we start to investigate it, we found out that they dropped the price to $2,500. And their only ask of us was that we put a camera in our stadium on the 50-yard line right in the middle, which luckily for us, our press box is centered to the 50-yard line, and at half court of our gym, so we could do girls basketball, boys basketball, and volleyball. And anything that we had going on in the stadium as far as sports, which is varsity, girls soccer, boys soccer, football, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, in those three sports I mentioned, the gym that we film those. And the benefit to the gymnasium sports is that not only could we get varsity sports, we could get junior varsity, and in some cases JV2 or freshman sports. And it's all powered without a camera operator. And the install time was 4 weeks, and that is still 4 weeks right now. It would be at our subcommittee meeting, I had said $5 a month. That's accurate in that it's $60 a year. There's also the option to get for, I think it's $10 a month, individual months. So if you were a soccer parent, for example, you might get this service for $20 for the 2 months that they play games. So Rockport and Newburyport already have these cameras installed. Several other schools are in the same kind of situation as us. So in this COVID environment where we may not have fans right away, for $20 at 2 or 3, 4 schools in our league, you could see your child play if they play in the stadium where the camera is. If you're a basketball or football parent, you pay $5 every time you go to a home game, and you pay about $7 or $8 every time you go to an away game to see one game. So cost-wise, as a parent, and I've talked to people about this. There's a meme out there in the meme world where it's a little kid in Little League with a backpack over his shoulder, and it's a night game, and the meme says, sooner or later, you're going to run out of days to drive your kid to practice. And as a parent of 2 kids that play sports all the time, that hit me right in the gut, because this is a finite time to watch our kids play. And if there's ever a situation where, and it's very, very likely here coming up, and our league has said, at least early on in our season, we're not sure if we can support parents coming, because it's, the state minimums and how we police that, and our focus is to get the kids the experience. So if that's a reality, we want to be able to provide something right now, immediately, for our parents and for our families and brothers and sisters and grandma and grandpa that love to come to the game and they look forward to it at a relatively low cost. I had sent Vinny, who I know is right there on the call, I had sent him my ideas for how we could pay this within the athletic budget. And it seemed reasonable to everybody that was in that email thread. As far as technology pieces, so very soon, what has already been approved for our capital budget, there's, for lack of, in a very simplistic way, there's a wire that needs to be run from like the school to the press box. Well, the upgrade is in place and approved already because, we have classrooms that are outside, and right now the school announcements don't go to outside. So if anything happened, whether it was lightning or heaven forbid something worse, the technology is going to be in place very, very soon already that would require the wire to go from the school to the press box to put this in. And I know in the meantime, Alan Topier and I walked the site with Alan, and he seemed to think that we could get this done right away. And to me, it seemed like a no-brainer. The reason why I brought it to the school committee, and frankly, it wasn't originally to ask permission if we could do this, and maybe I should have done that, but I didn't. It was originally because on the broadcast, they call it bumpers, right before the broadcast, right after the broadcast, they have National Federation of High School approved advertisements. And so the National Federation of High Schools, is the overarching they oversee every extracurricular, whether it be band or debate teams or drama teams or sports or cheerleading or any extracurricular activity. They're the governing body that oversees everything. And so they have ads that they approve on these broadcasts, and whether they be live or on demand. And so that's why I originally came to the school committee. I'm not. I can wait for questions if you want about the HW Camp piece. I have responses to that I think are compassionate and educated. But I would ask you what else you would need from me, and I can provide any information you need. Yes, Stacey.
So, question, you said that we don't need an operator, but so if it's going to be done live or recorded, who's going to take care of that to make sure that the parents can watch it? And where is it going to be stored exactly? Is it going to be stored up in the cloud or what? Because that takes a lot of, it does take time to do all that.
Yeah, so I would be the operator and provide the streaming service with our game schedules, tell them when to record, when not to record. It's not going to be on during the school day for PE classes. If coaches down the road, and I would not do this immediately, but down the road, if coaches wanted to record practice and watch it privately, they could do that. But that would not be my primary thing. I would control when it goes on, when it goes off, so that it's only during games. Secondly, even if it was somewhat, if it was, you have to go to the NFHS site, put in Hamilton Wenham, click girls basketball, whatever, I would make on our website. Alan has given me kind of the keys to the kingdom to update the athletic portion of the high school website. I would make it painfully obvious, and I would tweet and I would email and I would get it into families' hands that say something as simple as, if you want to watch this game, click here. And make it that simple. I would do the extra work for that.
And we also need to get, I believe, parents' signatures that it's okay, since the kids are minors, to be filmed. I just want to make sure of that.
Photo waivers, don't we?
With the athletics, you don't really need to do that because it's a public event. Having people photographed in school during the school day is different than a public event after school. We don't get a release from the Salem News, or we don't provide the Salem News a release to say you can photograph our athletes. I do every year make a cursory check to Mr. Tracy to see, hey, do we have any kids that this might affect, even though we technically don't have to, it's a public event. He always gives me the list, and so I'm not going to say there never would be, but this is my 9th year. There's never been an athlete on that list yet. I'll continue to do that, but it's a public event. It's not something that's private.
That's fine. I just want to cover our bases to make sure that we don't get in trouble. And then about running, how much is it going to cost for us to run our own fiber out there, the extra cost?
So if it was 3 months from now or 2 months from now or something, in the capital budget, it's already been approved to run that fiber. It's already been approved because the stadium needs the upgrade to get the announcements from the school in case of something simple like, hey, there's lightning coming, versus, heaven forbid, something a lot worse I'm not going to get into. But that cable is going to exist. I know that Alan has asked HWCAM if for a couple months, if we can just borrow a fiber cable to get this up and running, and then they could have it back. Alan has either asked that or will be asking that. That's what he told me he was going to do. So it's no extra money for that because it's already in place.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I know that's supposed to be 2021, but we're trying to use it now. So I
Yeah,
just
and
want to make sure if
Yeah.
Vinny also agrees we have this all in our budget, because we're running on a tight budget with everything that's going on with the COVID-19 stuff.
Yeah, and I
Exercise.
want and I definitely want to hear Vinny's answer on that too. But I feel like I have to jump in. When I spoke with an employee of HW Cam this past week, so I had never heard of the fact that there was a mobile camera option coming down the pike in HW Cam's 5-year plan. I was told last week that it was in their 5-year plan, and 5 years doesn't address the COVID need right now, which this product that I'm talking about is going to be beneficial beyond COVID, but it's not like there's an immediate need. So tonight in that letter was the first time I had heard that it's actually going to happen in 2021, just a year away, because the conversation I had last week did not say that. But anyway, I think it's important that Vinny answer that question.
Thank you.
So I know Alan does have a project for the capital budget, but when I had talked to him about it, I couldn't fully understand what the whole project was. So I can't answer whether or not it includes the fiber optic cable that is needed for it. I would have to get back to you and ask him.
Yeah. One of the things that I think would be important to add to the conversation right now is that the primary reason this particular issue is in front of the committee is that the CAM does have some advertising on it. And there is a policy for school committee that if there is going to be any type of advertising, you need to approve that. So one of the things that I wanted to be sure that the committee understood in this moment, what we most need from you is a vote to approve the advertising that would be on the CAM. We will continue to ensure that the logistics work around this. It is overall not to minimize $2,500, but in a larger budget, it is a relatively small amount that I know Craig has identified. I would also anticipate that it could potentially qualify for some of the CARES Act funding. But the issue that the committee has to do right now is to say that they are comfortable with the advertising for the camera. And so I wanted to be sure that people understood that's the vote you're taking.
So that advertising, is it going to the district, or is that to offset the cost of the service?
Well, actually, can I jump in here and talk, because we talked about this at great length and got Dorothy Presser's impression, because we looked at our existing advertising policy. I think the key things that Craig pointed out in looking at the list of what kind of content might be on it's not advertising. It's not typical for-profit advertising. So it's educational things related to their NFHS programming. There's a ton of things that are precluded from it. So I think advertising is not necessarily the word that I might use. I might call it, program informational kinds of things. The other key thing is that it's not truly commercial advertising. The NFHC is a nonprofit. It's not a for-profit entity. So we had a big go around in the policy subcommittee as to whether or not, well, is this commercial, yes or no? And we came to, it was our opinion that it was not commercial. And we also came to sort of feeling it wasn't necessarily even advertising as much as it was sort of supportive information about the programming. We got Dorothy's opinion as to whether or not we needed to amend our policy. Was it addressed? Was it not addressed? And it was her opinion that we were not in violation of the existing policy. So we sort of took comfort from that, but we did talk about it. I'm not sure if Peter or Michelle Horgan want to address anything else that we came out, but we were comfortable coming out of it. I'm not sure if I captured that conversation perfectly. So if others want to jump in.
No, I think you did cover everything, Anna. And again, I think the committee needs to know that we did weigh the pros and cons of it and looked at it fully and wholly, and not just in a small area, but a big one. So that's.
May I ask you a question?
Yep.
On the sign-off sheets where it says that a room has been cleaned, is there any place for a teacher to give
Peter,
their feedback?
Peter, that's not for this part of the discussion, but we can come back to that later if you want.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It must have glitched out because that's where I thought we were at.
Oh, okay, no, we're talking about the cameras from that policy thing. Can,
No,
so
I'm
in the
coming.
Q&A, there is the
No,
person who
I-
wrote us the letter today. Who wanted to speak to their plan. Do we want to hear from them?
Can I want to, because that was my initial understanding, was that we were being asked about the advertising. Is that I guess, because I feel like that's important about whether or not, if we're being asked just about the advertising,
Yeah, that is,
I have
that,
a different opinion about whether I need to hear from the other person or not. Does that make sense?
yes, because in what you have in your exhibit is a copy of the
Yeah, I
policy.
saw that.
And it's not, and there was a discussion, as Anna had mentioned with Dorothy, about how to best handle this. Do we amend the policy, or do we just bring this as a question to the board to vote? So basically, you would be indicating your comfort level. And I appreciate Anna's caution around using the word advertising, because it is certainly not a commercial based piece. But to say that you're comfortable with the types of promotions that may be viewed on this camera when folks are watching the video. So that is the question in front of the committee. And I don't know where you want to take it from there.
Are we locked into a contract with this?
Yeah, like, are we locked in? How long are we locked in? Is this $2,500 annually? Is it a one-time fee? What happens if the camera gets broken? Like, those are my questions.
Okay, so I can answer all those, and I can also answer a couple things from the Q&A. I don't know what order they were in, but it's a one-time $2,500 fee. If the cameras break or degrade, they come and replace them. There is a clause in there that if we're negligent, then we have to replace it. But normal degradation, for example, the stadium, it's outside, weather, they replace it. Our obligation is for 5 years. Any game at any level that's in that arena has to be broadcast on their network. Dave, did I answer your question yet? Okay. Michelle, did I answer your questions?
Now I have another question. Did you say any game that's played has to be broadcast?
Yes.
So if we were renting it out to,
Oh, no.
Football.
Yeah, no, just for our school. I'm sorry, any school game that takes place in either the gymnasium or the stadium field has to be broadcast. Any youth game would not be broadcast. Sorry.
So it's only, right, high school.
Yeah, right. Yep. And then a couple questions in the Q&A. One question was, is it like Live Barn, which is a technology that exists for youth hockey, high school hockey? It's a generation or two beyond Live Barn. For those that understand that, it's the same thing, but it's the same concept. It's a generation or two beyond technology-wise with how good it looks and how they capture the scoreboard and all that stuff. And some other questions, and two other questions. One I know is from Brian from HWCAM. HWCAM can still broadcast any game it wants. There's no, like, we couldn't have another company like the company I'm proposing come in and do this. But there is a clause that the local cable company can broadcast any game it wants. What I'm proposing doesn't have announcers. It doesn't have, kind of like the local flavor stuff that a local broadcast would. Of course, HWCAM could come and broadcast any game it wanted, whenever it wanted. Here's the thing for me, and this is a topic that kind of kicks me in the gut a little bit, to be fair, is that I've gotten, I'll call it feedback, but really I've gotten grief because sometimes, a lot of football games might be broadcast, but soccer games, whether it be boys and girls, aren't. And I know, and I think I know the answer to that, right? Like, the camera operators at HWCAM are available on on Saturdays more than they are during the week, right? They have stuff to do, whether it's a student intern or whether it's someone who's just out of high school or whether it's an adult professional who is working their tails off. They're more available Saturday at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock than they are at Wednesday at 3:45. But it hurt, and this is personal, and I'm not afraid to say it, it hurts me that people think I care about one sport more than the other. That really bothers me. And so, you know, like, it would be hard for any organization to say, we'll have a camera person there for every game in the stadium you ever play for the next 5 years and every high school game that takes place in the gym. It would just be very difficult to be able to rely on that. And so the system that I'm proposing does that. And whenever HWCAM wants to come and broadcast the game, they can also broadcast it. There's no conflict of interest there. So I don't want to be insensitive to anything, and I don't want to sound overly defensive, but, you know, it hurts when people say I don't care about some sports more than others. That is just a personal thing to me. So I felt the need to say that. I'm sorry if that was too much.
Thank you for that, Craig, because that's actually a great point. Because, you know, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, I do appreciate everything that HWCAM does for us, but they can't be everywhere all the time. And you know, that's a really nice point that you just brought up that really helps.
So,
I think you just vote to approve.
I feel like I want to hear from HWCAM.
But,
So-
but
I think
can I just bring up, but we're talking about advertising for our policy, correct? If it violates our policy.
True.
No, the policy, I think, is just that we have to.
It does
We have
violate
to
our
approve it.
policy. The question is whether or not we're going to put our policy aside in order to allow this to
Right, but
happen.
that's the question at hand, is what it's what the policy subcommittee worked on was the advertising, and I know we're using that term broadly, but that's my understanding is what you're saying is the three of you on the policy committee, that's what you worked on, is resolving this with Dorothy Presser and the three of you having conversations and doing research, is about whether or not this would be appropriate, given that it has something that could be loosely defined as advertising. So it's a different question.
No, I understand that, but I also think that where we're replacing a service that currently exists in our community with another service.
I guess I hear Craig saying we're not replacing it. We're just adding something else that HWCAM, this doesn't change any access that HWCAM has to.
I think it sounds like we're sort of
As
confusing
long
two
as we're
issues.
clear that that is the case, that they're not going to be somehow prevented from.
Yeah, Michelle, I can
It-
to that this definitely is not a replacement of HWCAM, and I can say that with confidence. As Craig mentioned, they are able to film all of the games. I see this as a response to COVID, where we have a situation where parents, siblings, friends may not be able to watch the games, right? And we know that HWCAM can't be everywhere at all times. So this addresses the equity issues where all games can be covered, and we have that guarantee. So this is a COVID-related response because it is unlikely that we're going to have spectators in the stands. And again, that what we're looking to do here is to get the committee's approval to move forward with the promotions that are associated with the camp.
So I just have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's right. David can go
Yeah,
first.
that's-
Okay. Well, David, I'll go after you. I've spoken a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, I just remember writing this advertising policy a couple of years ago. And I remember one of the big things that we were talking about at the time, which is still very relevant, is, you know, like the idea that with this turf committee, we're going to need, you know, to be able to give up naming rights at some point, because hopefully some local institution is going to give us a very large check to do so. But I'm sitting here reading it again, and this first, I don't think we're against. I I think this policy is actually gives us permission to do so. It's not against our policy. The first sentence is the school committee may grant permission for advertising of commercial products or services in school buildings or on school property under guidelines or regulations it may approve.
Mhm.
That first line just says that all we have to do is approve it.
Correct, and that's why it's here.
Okay. All right. But I just wanted to correct because someone said it is against our policy. It's not against our policy. Our policy is that we need to vote it in.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, that was going to be sort of just that reminder. Is that was sort of the determination of the policy subcommittee, is that it's right that Craig brought it to us. So bravo to Craig for making the right call, that we did have to talk about it, but that if we choose to do this, we have authority to do it. So I think procedurally, I think it's important that we're sticking. The question before us is about the policy and the advertising, not whether or not this is a good or not decision. Like they're unrelated. They're related but unrelated. So I think that's important. But I also think that in hearing Craig talk about it now twice and having researched it a little bit myself, I do think of it much more as not a replacement, but an augmentation. You know, HWCAM does a lot of amazing things, but this will do other amazing things. And in this particular environment, I like the idea that we're giving families more options to watch sports of all different flavors and kinds. I also like the idea that if other K-band leagues are doing it and using it, you know, I don't know that HWCAM would necessarily, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if HWCAM travels to away games in Newburyport to film. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I like the fact that with all the travel restrictions, that if you have a player who's away, you could still watch if you chose to. So to me, it just feels like we're adding an option. It's not a zero-sum thing. We're not taking away from HWCAM, we're adding to. And I'm okay with the advertising because it sounds like it's very heavily curated. I like to use that word here. I think it's curated content, not necessarily advertising. It's subject to regulation. It's, appropriate to the venue, to the topic. So I think we're okay, but I agree with David. We're here because we have to say, yes, we affirm it, but I don't think it goes against it as long as we've considered it.
Yeah, Dana?
I guess I don't think we have a motion on the table, and it would be
No,
helpful,
you wanna make one?
it would be helpful to me if someone would, because I feel like I really want to be very specific that we are voting just like we are saying, because I think we're getting in the weeds about things that, to be honest, I don't want to vote on something. I may or may not have different opinions about that, and I want to be clear on voting specifically on what the policy subcommittee brought to us.
Yeah. So do you want to make the motion or would you like Anna to make it?
Would love it if Anna would make the motion.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Dana, you rascal. You rascal. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee authorize permission for Craig Genualdo to engage a contract with NFHS to provide content broadcasting of high school athletic sports under this new platform.
Second.
There's a second by Peter Wolzek.
This is serviced by NFHS itself? Or is this a third company, a third party?
The camera equipment in the streaming service is a third party, Pixelot, but the content and it's run by NFHS.
Oh, all right, cool.
Who owns the content?
We do. It's in the contract. In the contract, it says we will broadcast games live for 5 years. It's completely at our discretion whether or not we rebroadcast that on demand. So let's say, for example, something happened at a game that didn't put our school in the best light, right? Like there was a fight or a fan came out of the stands or something crazy, right? I don't even know what to say, but something that didn't put Hamilton Wenham in a good light. We own that content. The second after it happens, we don't have to rebroadcast that again.
So it also couldn't be released to a news station or anything like that.
It's under our discretion. So if we had a situation where, we had an incredible game and a last second win and we wanted to, we could. We don't have to under any circumstance.
Okay. I'm gonna look in the Q&A.
Can we move to vote if we're done with discussing this topic?
Well, I was actually curious if, Michelle had mentioned about bringing HW Cam on. Does that need to happen now, or I just want to,
Are they gonna speak to the advertising?
Maybe because they're they don't have advertising.
Okay.
All right, Mary Beth, can you let Brian Dozer speak? We'll let him speak for 3 minutes. Means I have to get the timer ready.
Brian, you're all set?
Hi, Brian.
Hi, everyone.
I'm going to start you with 3 minutes. You should say your name and give your little title. big title.
Yeah, my big title. Is there a way to turn my video on? Because I do have video, but you could stare at my guitar if you want. My name is Brian Dozer, Doser. I'm the chair of the Hamilton Wenham HW Cam board. Been on there for 10 plus years at this point, going on 15. Again, if it's just speaking to the advertising of the issue, that really runs a fine line. I mean, to speak directly to it, before the high school was wired, there were TVs in every classroom, which I know there still are, but they were actually, we had a proposal from a company to come through and say, listen, we'll run all the wiring through the entire building for you for free. It's just that during your morning newscast, we want to make sure that we have a splash up on the screen that says, this is brought to you by Channel 1 educational advertising, educational, whatever it was. And, we went before the school committee at the time and we were rejected because, this policy was, it was directly in conflict with what they considered to be the policy at the time. So my two issues are, number one, obviously you don't get anything for free. So the cameras are going to come, but are all the parents going to be willing to want to, pony up money to have this service? And number two, there is going to be advertising. I mean, even if it's at the beginning and the end, if it's still up there and it still promotes Champion shirts or whatever they're promoting, which is what I see on their website, it's still an issue. Do I think it's a fun looking service? Especially for the kids who are in the lower levels, the JV and the freshman levels. Yeah, we don't have enough camera manpower to get those games done, but it just makes it seem like we haven't had any camera coverage of anything, in my opinion, the way this is being proposed. And, I really think those two questions are on my mind. An average parent, I wouldn't pay $60 if my kid was in it. I couldn't afford it. Per season, per semester. And the other thing is, I just think any type of commercialism doesn't belong in education. But that being said, it's a very attractive package. And I don't think they can just be run without some type of person having to sit there and oversee this robotic camera doing what it does. I don't think it's a personless type system. So at least that's not the way it looks on the website. That's it. Thank you for giving me some time. I appreciate it.
Well timed. You had 8 seconds left. You are a professional. Thank you, Brian. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I I'm just gonna say I really don't like this idea because it kind of runs counter to supporting the Hamilton Wenham CAM. But I would support the advertising part of it because honestly, if kids are using Google, they're often getting fed advertisements in school. I think that the climate on advertisement has changed. Michelle?
can I just, Michelle, but don't look at it as throwing Hamilton Wenham under, Cam under the bus. This is augmenting, this is special times. These are unprecedented times. They can't be there for boys and girls soccer during the weekday.
Yeah.
And this allows parents to be watching from home their child play, you know? So you have to look at it as a partnership.
Yeah.
In that we'll still use them, but this is helping the parents and the students to get through this crazy time.
Yeah, Stacy?
Exactly.
I like the idea of the camera. Obviously, I don't want to interfere with HW Cam, which Craig says it's not interfering. I guess my biggest issue is the advertising piece. That's what gets me. I like the camera idea, but I have a hard time with this advertising piece. And, you know, we don't have necessarily any control of that and what may be advertised. And it might be something against what our school district believes in. So that's just my hesitation on it.
Dana?
So, Stacy, I actually, I share your concern. And at the same time, I think I know that I trust that we have tasked our fellow members, the policy committee, to do the research, and they did, and they came back to us. My understanding is that you voted in support 3-0. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so even though, in all honesty, upon initial reading, I shared Stacy's concerns, I personally feel like I know that the three of you worked hard and you did your due diligence, and I'm convinced by the work that you've done. So that's where I stand.
Peter?
I just wanted to respond to say that we looked at what advertising was allowed and not allowed, and it conformed perfectly with our values. There's nothing that will be advertised that goes against the values of our culture here in Hamilton, Wenham.
Super. So this is kind of one of those examples of how we would like to build our committee to work, that we task and trust our working groups to do their due diligence and bring us things that are fully cooked and ready to go. And I think that's where we're at this point. So does anybody else want to speak before we vote?
I'll just speak to the content, because I don't know how far into the weeds people have gotten on this, or if the public is listening, but if it'd be helpful, I can read off the things that are explicitly precluded from content. I think that might help. So per their own policy, the things that are, so I'll just read their statement. Advertising that shall be false, misleading, deceptive, offensive, or in poor taste shall be subject to rejection. All advertisements must comply with the applicable laws, rules, and regulations of state associations and/or schools that govern the applicable broadcast. Without limiting the generality of the foregoing, certain categories of advertisements will not be accepted without prior consent, with such consent may be withheld for any reason whatsoever. These categories include, so these are things that are not allowed. Advocacy advertisements. An advocacy advertisement is any advertisement that advocates a political, religious, or controversial public position. Cigarettes or tobacco, betting or gambling, firearms, 900 phone service numbers, contraceptive advertisements, tattoo parlor and body piercing advertisements, NC-17 rated movies, adult entertainment advertisements, R-rated movies, M-rated electronic computer video content, hard liquor, beer, wine, or other alcoholic beverages, high-risk investments such as commodities, options, foreign exchanges, and advertisements. Second page, high-risk business opportunities, e.g. get-rich schemes and business opportunities, and high-risk health offerings. So part of what made us feel okay with it is that's sort of the laundry list of the things you don't want your kids getting involved with. So that made me feel better about it.
My kids get involved in a Ponzi scheme. Okay,
Move to vote.
so why don't we go ahead and vote? I think everybody's ready to vote. Dana?
Yes.
Me, yes. David? Oh, I
Yes.
forgot Stacy. Stacy?
Yes.
Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And Peter?
Yes.
So looks like it's a unanimous yes with, I think, some support for continuing free access through HWCAM. All right, Craig, we asked you also to, you had come and asked us to approve sports to be played, but then you still had another meeting coming up. So we just wanted to get sort of a wrap up on what's going to happen with sports this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, that's great. And so, like, thank you. These other issues, just to take a second, are incredibly layered and complicated, and relationships are important. And, you know, you have my word that I will honor the relationship with HWCAM and continue to do everything I can to support them in addition to this. You have my word on that. So I understand that, and I'm grateful for that. I don't take that for granted. Regarding an update on athletics, so last night was the last Cape Ann League school district that had to vote. 11 out of 11, a clean sweep of districts, approved fall sports similarly to the way that you did, which is incredible. There is one school community that had a spike that turned their community red, according to the Mass DPH standards, not local standards. And so they're on a 2-week delay. They're starting practices 2 weeks later, and they're playing games 2 weeks later. But the game schedule is going to be released in the next few days. We're advancing. We've had multiple meetings with our coaches. Last night we had our online parent meeting. It was the first, it was like the 28th preseason meeting I've done. It was the first time it was ever like that, like all of us. Very different. The information for that meeting, there's a slide deck, there's a PDF set of handouts, and we recorded the Zoom webinar of the general session. That's all on the athletics section of the high school website. You can click that and find it right now if you wanted to. The practices begin Friday. We've been meeting with coaches constantly. My phone is blowing up with texts, and I love it. There's nothing in this world work-wise I love to do more than talk to coaches who love their kids and want to create a great environment for success and opportunity. And so we've been talking ongoing, both formally and informally, about how the season works. I would say, if you're interested, that slide deck that's on the athletic website is informative. It gives a lot of information about how facilities are going to work, about how practices are going to be set up, about how we're going to contact trace, about how kids are going to enter their day and how they're going to be safe. And there's a lot of good information in there. So I would highly encourage you to hit that up if you're interested. And, the one kind of thing that's out there, and I have to, to be fair, this is probably the one thing that's going to be difficult. Well, there's probably two things. The first thing is that the Cape Ann League has strongly recommended that for the first week and a half that we not have fans at games. And this speaks exactly to what we were talking about. The first games are essentially on a Friday, Saturday, and the next week we're saying no fans for now. The reason why is because we feel very strongly that there's a lot of new guidelines that game administrators, athletic directors, coaches need to focus on. And if, just speaking practically, if I'm at a soccer game and my eyes are behind me on the stands, they're not in front of me on the game. And there's only, we can't hire 50 people to be event staff. But we have committed to the end of that first full week to say, we've had, a few games now. Let's see how this goes. Maybe we reconvene and we discuss, maybe we invite senior parents at first for home games only because they may not have a chance to see their kids again. Maybe we phase in something else where we're committed to continuing to look at that. Maybe Governor Baker says the outside standards outside the participants go from 50 to 100, which gives us a little more breathing room and allows for, some more kind of leniency and flexibility. And then how do we contact trace those people? Well, we'll figure that out the same way we figured everything else out. So that's kind of one piece that's still out there. The other piece that's out there, frankly, is user fees. And this is something that I feel to be authentic and genuine to you as a group that needs to be addressed. Generally, by now, the user fee would be set. We set the user fee approximately 10 to 12 days prior to the season based on the costs that we know about divided by the number of participants that have registered to date. We delayed that this year, and it's important to say why, right? Like, the fixed costs have changed, and we can figure that out fairly easily, and that's all set up. But because of the uncertainty with our season, and because people didn't know, like, I'd like to sign my child up for fill in your sport, soccer, field hockey, golf, cross country, but I don't know if they're going to be safe. I want to kind of wait and see what's going on. The number of participants when we normally would have set the fee was way down. I shouldn't say way down, it was down. And so that would have had a significant impact on user fees, because you would have been dividing the total number by a lesser number of participants, right? And so your user fee would have been bigger. Furthermore, and this is something that I know, if Vinny wants to speak to it or not, we can. Until we were absolutely certain that we were going to have a season, we didn't want to start collecting user fees, because then if we didn't have the season, we would have had to refund everybody again. And I think we did that fairly well last spring. I mean, I'm not going to say it was perfect. There was probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess at about 230 spring athletes. And, I'll raise my hand and say, I probably missed 4 or 5 that should have gotten a refund that didn't out of that number. And it's incredibly manual. And, we did the best we could, and we were flying by the seat of our pants kind of thing. And we wanted to avoid collecting fees this fall unless we were absolutely certain we were going to play. And so it's a balancing act, right? We just found out in late last week, this time last week, 3 out of 11 Cape Ann League's districts had approved sports. Now we're at 11 out of 11. So we had to delay that process. And so that's coming. I think it's important to say that this year the user fees are going to be higher, significantly higher than they've been. Not necessarily because of COVID, because the way to be fair, the way the structure has changed is families, COVID or not, had to contribute a lot more because of all the tumultuousness of last spring, and budget cuts, and user fees went up again to levels where they were at a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So user fees are going to be high, and those are going to be announced next Friday, but we're full speed go, and we're ready to rock and roll. So that's our update.
So when will we need to vote again for the winter sports?
That's a great question. I don't, so it's your prerogative to do whatever you choose, right? I don't know if the state is going to require us to vote for winter sports.
Okay.
The state only required us to vote if we were going to be full remote. At the time we voted, we were kind of on the fence. I didn't want to put you all in a spot where you had to vote if you didn't want to, but I wanted to give you the option to vote if you wanted to. So I think it was the right call to vote, because ultimately we went full remote. I don't know that that's going to be the case in the winter. My guess is we're going to kick the fall off, get the fall going, and then start to manage fall while looking ahead to winter.
Okay, so we won't necessarily vote again unless for whatever reason we think we're going to be in remote for a long time and we're in the red at the time the season's gonna.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Was there something else for Craig? Mary Beth? Yeah. All right.
Well, there was the concussion policy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks for the reminder. I felt like there was 3 and that was only 2.
I know it's really out of order, but while we have him, I don't know if you want to jump ahead or not.
Yeah, let's just do that, because I think this is really just a reauthorization of that with no changes.
Correct.
Can I ask a procedural question? According to the policy, it was adopted in 2016. It said it was going to be reviewed in 2018, but there's no annotation it ever was. I don't know if that matters or not. So it seems like we're kind of right on schedule for its 2-year review if we catch up now.
Yeah, my recollection is we talked about it. It just never got posted. I could be wrong about that, but I remember talking about it. But
We never got approved, and so it just kind of got pushed off. Is what
Yeah, I
happened.
don't think that we ever did a reauthorization of it.
okay.
We didn't.
Does it matter if we jump ahead and do it again now?
No, let's just do it.
Nope.
Okay.
Craig, is it a law that it has to be reauthorized every 2 years, or is that just a stupid thing that's in a lot of our policies?
No, my knowledge, my recollection is that it's a Mass DPH requirement. That we review it every 2 years. I did review it. I looked at it carefully. We still do all the same stuff. We're comfortable doing the same stuff. You know, there's nothing I mean, look at all the stuff we're talking about. There's nothing we take more seriously than the kids' health. So.
So why don't you make a motion so explain to me, this isn't really a first reading because it's just a reauthorization, right? Okay,
Is the motion just to
make a motion to whatever, approve it.
Yeah, okay. So I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District approve the concussion policy as presented in the exhibit.
Is there a second? Second from Anna. My only discussion is, so this is not being approved in form. That means that this needs to be updated on our website as soon as we're done voting, if we approve it. And secondly, someone has to communicate it to Dorothy, because this will be a change in the policy that she has.
Because of the dates being different?
Yeah.
I can do that. I can let her know.
Anybody have any comments on the concussion policy? Nope. All right, we're gonna move to vote. Anna?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Michelle Bailey, yes. Great. Hey, fantastic. You are relieved of duty. You're welcome to stay, Craig.
I'm very grateful for all of you. Thank you for all your work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So now the big news of the night. Do you want to do the metrics first, or do you want to do the school opening?
Why don't we go through the metrics documents? So I'd be happy to present to the committee. As I believe everyone is aware, this past Monday, the boards of health reconvened to reconsider their metrics. And there was a shift in those metrics. And again, I'm going to share my screen just for a moment to show you where that shift has occurred. So what's up? So one of the questions that has existed in the community is the infection rate, the 7-day incident rate for the towns of Hamilton and Wenham. The boards of health had a more conservative number in these areas, and they had, on Monday, they voted to change the number to 8 per 100,000. That is in alignment with the state metrics. So that has been changed. You can see it in the documents here, and they are also making some narrative adjustments as well. Part of the outcome of this conversation is that reframing or reinforcement that they intend these to be guidance, but not something that if this happens, then X automatically happens. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, okay, what will the impact of something like that be? And what I want to, oops, just minimize that by mistake. So in something like this, what we're looking at, and to remind the community, when the numbers shifted significantly, we made the decision to move to a remote learning environment for 3 weeks. That was the COVID response team got together, looked at the metrics, and made that decision based on the existing information from the boards of health at that time. We had indicated that we would come back together on September 24th after a 3-week time period to look at the trends. And if the trends are improving and indicating that we are in the more towards the yellow, then we would move forward with our plans to reopen school on October 1st. So we are intending to continue to follow that plan. When we reconvene on September 24th, we will be utilizing the new metrics that have come forth from the boards of health. So I wanted folks to be aware of that. I also wanted to share with the committee and the community that we also received a recent communication from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that is reinforcing and asking communities to think about shifting after they've seen a 3-week trend, so that not a single event would shift communities from one modality of learning to another. So that's another new piece of information that came forth during this week. So one of the things that we are doing to help the community see where we are, this is a metrics dashboard that we will be linking to the website, and it helps the community to see what are our daily incident rate per 100,000 in a 7-day measuring period and in a 14-day measuring period. So you can see here what was happening with the data, how it jumped, and at the time, 6.43 put the district into what the boards of health had signaled would be a red zone. And what you can see now is those numbers are dropping significantly again. So the trend right now is that we now have 2 weeks of data that are showing that we are now hitting that yellow zone mark. And again, we now have less conservative numbers that we'll be looking at. So we will get 1 more week of data on the 23rd. And then on the 24th, our COVID response team will get back together, look at the data. And if the trends continue as they currently are, we would anticipate moving forward with moving to the hybrid model again on October 1st. Dana, as the school committee representative on that group, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that was, I think that was very helpful. I guess there is one thing I'd like to add, which is that even though the one metric regarding the Hamilton and Whatnam daily incident rate was adjusted by the Board of Health, just to be clear, we do, I don't know if you want to pull that, the graphic up again, but there are still, the Board of Health still did the Board of Health took a lot of time and caution in looking at our community specifically. And so even though they did adjust that rate, if you notice, like, for example, in the yellow, we also have the adjoining 2 towns incident rates, adjoining towns. And they did take that into consideration because we are a regional school district. They did want to look at the surrounding communities. So I just want to put that out there, that it's still not just the sort of the blanket, what color is your town based on the state. But they did feel like they were more in line with the state. Now they're learning that, and this is really complicated, and they did hard work to adjust these based on all the new information that they have.
And Mary Beth and I spoke, like, the new data is supposed to be published on Wednesdays and it's supposed to be published at 6 o'clock. And we were like, maybe it'll be ready for the meeting. And I just checked and it's still not posted. So we don't even have this week's data yet. So we don't really know what's going on.
You know what's interesting is that I actually got it appeared to be on the news, but not on the website right before. So
Interesting.
So I think it must be coming up right now, because I saw that there was it said, new towns turn whatever.
Yeah.
but I wasn't able to.
And if you look on the document, and I would suspect Mary Beth Ting is behind the fact that the numbers actually are posted here for
Okay.
and
Excellent.
one. So we have some dedicated professionals that are getting these numbers posted for our community. And so what our members can see is that not only the average daily rate for Hamilton and Wenham, but we've also put what the average number that we're using for surrounding communities. And I'm pleased to share, and I'm sure everybody is happy to hear, that we are seeing those numbers come down. And we now have a 2-week trend for that. So that bodes well for moving forward with our October 1 opening. And again, I'd like to echo Dana's comment and thank the boards of health. This is not easy work. We know as we work through COVID, this is constant iteration. We try something, we see how it plays out, we learn from that, and we continue to make adjustments. And I know one of the themes as we go through the fall that you'll be hearing with our educational program, we'll be doing exactly the same thing, putting our best effort forward, analyzing what's working well and not working well, and making adjustments when needed.
Hamilton made a big deal out of being a green community several years ago about getting grants for doing energy things, and it's taken on a whole new meaning.
So
All right.
the
Question,
metric,
David?
yeah,
And Stacy has
I have a couple questions. I've got,
Okay.
So the Desi said that we should not make moves unless it's based on a 3-week cycle. Does that mean if we see an uptick to over eight people per? Go ahead, Dana.
I don't know, but so if in the longer narrative that we received from the Board of Health, it does address that. So in other words, what Desi is talking about is if the community, the broad community, so Hamilton Wenham community is trending upward, that you would really want to see a 3-week trend. But that does not mean if we saw, for example, a cluster of cases at the high school or something like that, that if you look in that narrative, there would be, obviously there would be situations in which we would still need to move rapidly to remote.
Do we have a plan written out, or are we just sort of going by sort of, feeling out everything as it comes in, right? Because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, having 3 weeks in a row of making that new 8 metric, and I do believe 8 is the right number. But, having to wait 3 weeks before we actually make a decision, excuse me, because I think we're actually putting our students, teachers at risk at that point. But I mean, I'd like to see some sort of plan in writing. So we're saying if X, we're doing Y, in that way, there's not all this sort of speculation, not speculation, but like, misinterpretation, by the public and even by myself, because right now I still don't fully grasp what's going on.
So if the graphic that Mary Beth just had up really is kind of what you're saying, that if X, then Y. So if one of these things happened, that is the answer to that. But at the same time, the reason we have this COVID response team is because that graphic cannot represent each and everything that could potentially happen. So and I'm not remembering what town it was, and maybe we shouldn't say it anyway, but there was a town that had an incident where there was a large high school party and there was some exposure there. And so that would be an example where then you might need to be nimble and make a decision about what does this incident mean? And that would be perhaps a more rapid response would be needed. And then there are, in the narrative there are incidents about if there's one case in the school, there are narratives about that.
And what I can add to that, Dana, is that we do have protocols in terms of what happens if a student is found to have COVID or a teacher is found to have COVID, what the protocols would be related to that. And that's working very closely with the boards of health. And what I think may be helpful, because I think you're not alone in your question around that, is I would recommend at the next meeting that we have the nurses present to the board so that you know exactly what the protocols would be if somebody is found to have COVID, and just review them both for the committee and for the community. Because I think like I said, David, I would assume you're not alone in that question, and there is a thorough answer to that. And I'd like to have the documentation presented well and thoughtfully. So Michelle, with your permission, we could add that to the next meeting.
Sounds great. Two things. One, can you pull Mary Beth in as a participant, because she's here and we know that she's working on the numbers. And second, we're going to recognize Stacy to speak.
Yeah, I know that I'm glad that they changed the metrics to be 8 as opposed to the 6. So I was just, I think the concern was how we got such a conservative metrics, and then also why we're including so many communities. And that could be really detrimental for us, with levels of, going back to class. I'm not trying to say not to make this safe, but I feel like we made such a quick jump to remote without really looking at all the data, and really would love to follow what the state is recommending. And just feel, that we're going back and forth, and we voted twice for hybrid. So I just want to make sure that, these aren't excuses to stay remote.
It's not. Can we have Mary Beth speak, and then we'll have Dana speak?
Hi, good evening. I thought I would just give a little bit more information to David Polito's question. So David, the question about multiple cases. So one of the new things that's happened just on Monday, the 14th, was DESE came out with new guidance, and I believe Mary Beth had pulled that up earlier. And so DESE is now requiring schools to report all positive cases, whether it's a student or a staff member, to DESE, so that DESE's in the loop. Because with any plan of closure of school, that has to be a direct communication between the superintendent and DESE. That's not made independently. And so they will have been receiving information that it's 1, it's 2, it's however many cases are in however many of the schools within the district. So Mary Beth has said clearly that, yes, we do have protocols for how we will manage individual cases within each of the schools in the district, but then on a larger level, DESE is learning, and they are requesting this. They're saying they're also, hoping to walk districts through and provide support and encouragement, because not every district has the engagement of their local boards of health in the same way. Every community is different in the resources that they have available. And so that's definitely in place. I would say that although the matrix document, I really wish we had named them differently, because now it's difficult to tell what's what. But the color-coded document that distills the narrative has been changed slightly. And it now represents, if you look between the colors, particularly, well, in either direction, it distillates the narrative in saying that it's not just the things that are in the color-coded number, but it's actually the other considerations as well. So Stacy, that does speak to your point that it's not just one thing, but if any of the measures are not met, consider other relevant metrics as well. So look at the whole picture in making a decision about switching modes of learning. And David, again, to your point that if there's a lot of disease, a lot of infection going on in our schools, we will not take the time for 3 weeks of growing problem before we make a change. And DESE is recognizing that by saying that we need to report the cases to them. So I know that's a lot of time. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your dedication. Dana, do you want to talk just a little bit about I know you and I have had several conversations about what happened when we made the decision to go to.
I think, and I really want to take a moment to just be really clear, because Stacy, you just said, we voted twice, or we didn't really vote twice. We voted once for hybrid and we decided not to vote again. And that is true. And I actually voted to enter in the hybrid mode. And I want to make it really clear to the public, because I have fielded numerous emails about this. I want to make it very clear to the public that we, the COVID response team, used the metrics that we had at hand from the boards of health. And they were those metrics that at that time there were a lower threshold at 6. But that was a very productive, positive experience working with that COVID response team. We were able to pull together in a matter of hours. All of us met. And the team consists of our public health nurses, our director of facilities, our superintendent, myself. And we really talked through exactly what these numbers meant. And our decision was not based on anything other than the metrics and safety. And I just want to make that clear to the public that this was not in any way rejecting or overturning the vote of the school committee. The school committee had always voted that we had voted and said we would be in hybrid as long as the metrics dictated that that was appropriate. And we were continuing on that, and we are still continuing on that. In that, when we meet on the 24th, we're going to be asking the very same question. We're going to say we're in hybrid if the metrics dictate that, and that's the same question. So I just want to say that because I think there's a lot of confusion out there about that.
All right, so it's looking good. Everybody get your backpacks clean because you're bringing them in. Make sure you have your masks. The teachers are ready. We've seen the buildings. Anna, it's got to be quick because Mary Beth is going to give her update on the school opening.
Yep. No, I just wanted to offer a helpful way that I've found to be effective in explaining the metrics chart to people. Mary Beth was talking about calling it something else. I might make the suggestion we refer to it as the stoplight because it's literally the same colors as the stoplight and functionality works in a similar way. So when you're approaching a red light, you typically want to stop relatively quickly. But when you start up again, you kind of take it easy, right? You don't gun it off the line. So I've actually found that in my own brain to be helpful to explaining it to people that when we're entering into if we're going from hybrid to remote, we want to make that decision quickly because it means there's a sign of something coming at you and you need to stop quickly. But when you start up again, you want to be cautious because you want to make sure you have it right. And that's sort of corroborated by the 3-week trending declining, which is both in our chart and the DESI chart. So I found that really helpful trying to explain it to people, like what's the difference between the rate, even though the colors are the same. It's not an immediate stop and an immediate start. It's a quick stop and a slow start. I don't know if that
I
helps.
just want to make sure, though,
Matrix
that
is
we
now
are
called the
using
stoplight.
data and not emotion, because even people at the Board of Health spoke up, very emotionally, and we need to be careful not to, really do the emotions. We need to go more on the data.
Stacey, I'm struggling because I'm feeling it's really hard. It's hard for me to hear you say you want to make sure that we're not basing this on emotion, because it makes me concerned that you're not hearing what I'm saying, because what part of what I said indicates that this was an emotional decision?
It felt, instead of going through the data as long-term, it was you guys, the last time when you chose to go remote was like a quick turnaround that, the way it was such a conservative matrix, and in a short time.
So I guess, would it be fair to reframe that you and a lot of people felt that the metrics that the Board of Health created were too conservative?
Yes.
So to me, that's a really fair argument, that is a legitimate and fair thing to say, that you felt that the metrics were too conservative. But that is not the same thing as saying that we on the COVID response team made an emotional decision. Can we?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. I did hear the chair, Michelle Bailey, say if one person gets, the COVID, we're shutting down the schools. And I think she has to be careful speaking for the whole committee. And we just need to all be fair, when, looking at this data, because everything is very sensitive when we're talking about it for everybody.
The committee's not
concerned.
involved in shutting the
It's
school.
not involved in
depending
that.
on the numbers
I do
at
believe
all.
what I said.
At all.
That if one person gets sick, we would probably need to shut down the schools because a lot of people would be afraid to send their kids to school.
Okay, but
that is not going to be the COVID response team. That's going to be individual parents not sending their kids to school, and that's going to inhibit their whatever ability to function as a school because they'll have a
Okay.
high absenteeism. But we don't know. I could be wrong, but that has nothing to do with the COVID response team. All right. So what we know is that our Board of Health heard a lot of people in the community. The Board of Health went back, reflected on their matrix, and they have changed that. So we will see if what the state has set as the matrix is actually one that works for our community. And if it is not, then the Board of Health will, in their reasoned way, reconsider that again. So, all right, Mary Beth.
All right, the next item on the agenda is just a quick superintendent's update in terms of back to school information and just some highlights that I thought the community might enjoy in terms of some of the things that are happening. So in the superintendent's report, you can see that one of the things that was happening at the high school was a summer reading program. This particular program was co-developed with students, and a particular focus of this summer's reading was around issues of equity and justice. And they are tentatively planning on December 3rd to have a whole school conversation about the different books that students chose to read. You can see here some of the options that students had over the course of the summer. And again, right now the tentative date is October 1st when we get back in person, where students across the school will be coming together to talk about the concepts and ideas that were in the book that they chose to read this summer. As we kind of continue to scroll down, community can see the parent opening webinar from the high school if they're interested to just get a sense of what the high school is looking at, what are the precautions that have been taken there. At the middle level, I'd like to recognize the counselors at the middle level that put together a 6th grade virtual welcome where students received a Flipgrid with their teachers, their administrators, all giving virtual welcomes to their students. And while the 6th graders couldn't start right in person, this again speaks to our teachers, their creativity and their investment, even when we are distanced, to be sure that as new school students enter that school, that they are recognized and welcomed well. At the elementary level, last Friday, we had meet and greets with material pickups. So these are from Cutler, but in each of our elementary schools, families came, they got to meet their teacher face to face, and they picked up some materials that they're using in their education this week. We are also doing kindergarten screening this week. So we have students coming in at all 3 of our elementary levels These are screenings that typically happen in the spring, but were not able to happen last year. So our kindergarten teachers are sitting down with our newest and youngest learners to understand where they're entering and getting some time to just have some face-to-face time with those students. So that is occurring all this week. And thank you for our kindergarten teachers for pulling that together quickly. And then I also wanted to share that our Academy of Personalized Learning is launched. We are currently anticipating that folks will begin working on the online platform tomorrow. They've been doing some initial connecting activities and that type of thing. We have 3 of our teachers that are working with this group of students, and we're pleased at the flexibility that this type of programming can offer our families that need it. And then you also have access to a week 1 update from our student services programming, give you a sense of how special education services are moving along. And this is an example of a classroom that is currently up and running. And that information is available to the committee and the community as well. So in my superintendent's update, I really want to recognize the efforts of our teachers who have just done remarkable work. They had to pivot quickly. They did it with professionalism and compassion and dedication, and I am deeply appreciative of that. I would also like to recognize the remarkable work of our administrators, many of whom are working right through the weekends in order to ensure that schools are ready and that you see the types of facilities that you spoke about earlier this evening. So I again feel very privileged to be in this community and am very, very grateful for the professionals I work with.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Did you have a question for Mary Beth, Anna?
I do. I just sort of have like a couple of generalized questions now that we're rolling it out a little bit, and I don't expect an immediate answer because I think, as you like to say, answers do evolve. So, but now that it's rolling ever so slightly, there have been sort of some consistent refrains that I've heard. So this is more just me communicating on behalf of constituents in sort of an organized kind of way. But there still seems to be a little bit of confusion or concern about schedule variability between the different schools, especially with the middle school on a different schedule and then the elementary schools on a different schedule. And I know that that caught some parents by surprise that the middle school is doing something different. So I'm wondering if we could sort of speak to that and whether or not that's going to be persistent or not. I know that they're doing something different this week than they're doing next week than they were doing in the original plan. And so I have a middle school child, so I think I might have a little bit of confirmation bias that people reach out to me because I also have a middle schooler. So I'll acknowledge that. But there was a lot of concern about the change in the middle school schedule as being a deviation from the plan and wondering what's going to happen the next time we go into remote and whether or not the schedule sort of irregularity is going to change. Are we going to modify it again? Are we going to have any sort of teacher-led discussion about what schedule works? Because right now it's a little confusing for parents and it's different than what we expected. So that's one sort of general bucket of commentary. And then the other general bucket of commentary, which I know we've talked about before, but keeps coming up, is this time on learning question. And I know that it's evolving. It's the first week, but I've gotten a lot of questions from parents that are concerned or not providing enough content. We're just not getting there. And it's different. The elementary parents feel that way in one way, middle school parents feel differently. And then there's been a lot of feedback from high school parents that they just don't feel like their kids are getting enough time on learning, enough teaching. And I'm just sort of curious to know, now that we have some data, I guess kind of like the metrics, you said something, it was good. Like we're learning, right? We started it, we rolled it out. We're getting some feedback. We're getting parent feedback. I'm assuming we're getting teacher feedback. Is there going to be a mechanism for us as a district to say, wow, this worked great. Let's do more of that. Wow, this was a little crazy. I'm not sure if this is a great idea. And today, in some ways it was great, but I have to comment, the size of the elementary school Zooms blew my mind when my daughter was on a Zoom with 215 other students. And I'm not sure how sustainable that is for the kids or the teachers. I know that was billed as like a connection point to their regular classes. I have a hard time getting my head around how that's actually going to work on an ongoing basis, but I know that's a crucial part of that plan. So I just sort of want to introduce the idea of asking you, is there a mechanism for feedback and adjustment as we learn more, as we innovate, and how's that going to work while we're in the middle of the plan?
Yeah, those are some great questions, Anna. And I can tell you, as I was going around to schools on Monday, when I was speaking to faculty members, what I said was that there is 0% chance we are going to launch this and it's all going to be perfect, right? There's no way, right? That we know this is a complex undertaking. We'll get some things right and we'll get some things wrong. And that is a given. So in terms of feedback mechanisms at the elementary level, classroom teachers are going to be sending out a survey to their parents on Friday. And then we'll be clustering that data at the school level as well. Middle school will be sending out a survey either on Friday or Monday to get some early feedback in terms of how things are working. And at the high school, the first collection of feedback is actually going to come from the students in terms of what they're experiencing. This is an iterative process. And the way that we work through an iterative process is to get lots of feedback, reflect on it, and make changes. So I absolutely agree with kind of the premise that you have, that we need to be taking in information as to how are the things that we're putting forth working, and to have a mechanism to make those changes. So that is in place for some immediate feedback this week, and then we will have a more structured piece as we move forward. So I do want to recognize that and let parents in the community know you can anticipate seeing those surveys coming forth, and we will take them seriously and look for trends and places where we need to make adjustments where it's not working for large numbers of folks. So that's one piece. In terms of the middle school question that you brought up, Anna, that one of the things that we sat with this as we quickly pivoted from hybrid to remote was that we knew that it was likely that we were pivoting right back to hybrid, and it was the start of the school year, and what would that look like? And one of the concerns at the middle level, given some of the unique needs of students in that developmental phase, was a need for additional structure at the outset. I can tell you that I had a conversation with a principal today who is saying that he's actually getting a lot of positive feedback about that piece. So they were going to be doing some reflection as to whether or not it made sense to just stay with that until we pivot on the first. I know he was talking with teachers and trying to gather some more information around that. So just that was the thinking behind that. There was some concern at that particular developmental age if they really felt that they wanted the students to have some level of structure at the outset.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I actually think that's what's interesting to me about it, is I actually think a lot of people I've heard like it, but it was different than what they expected. So I actually, this is where innovation is really good. I haven't heard a ton of negative feedback about it. I think most people liked it. It was more that that's not what the plan said. That wasn't what they had scheduled with childcare and other services. And then if they also had elementary kids, their kids are on different things. And that was very different than how we had marketed the cohorts being together. So you could plan predictability. So that to me is like a huge question of like, is the middle school onto something? Like, is that a good idea? Maybe are there elements of what's working? I mean, this is where for Coming House things, I would just like to put in a plug that if we make these adjustments to really make sure that that's sort of a teacher-led process and a parent sort of affirmed process, because I think the only negative feedback was not so much that the idea was bad, but the rollout of it was chaotic. People had been told they're going to go to work on these days, their kids will do this, but then all of a sudden it was something very different, and they had to adjust not only to the hybrid to remote, but then to a different version of remote than they had thought they were going to have.
Yeah.
And I just think that was the harder part, not so much what it was, but I think if we're going to make switches and ask people to be flexible, which I think is huge, like we all have to be super flex on this, right? An homage to Dolly McIlvaine, the characters of Superflex, right? We all have to be super flex, but I think parents are almost at their limit right now. And so whatever changes we make, I think we have to be really clear when it's happening, why it's happening, what's the pedagogy behind it, how is it going to work? Because that was a quick pivot, and middle school parents were, they were a little topsy-turvy as a result of it. So
It's definitely. I was telling Mary Beth today, like at my school, we still don't know what the schedule is for Wednesdays. Like, because it's 7 days away. We still have 7 days to figure it out. So it's like, so all right. Did you have anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay, so it's my turn. So a couple things. I want to thank everybody for going and doing the site tours. I just thought after hearing the teachers speaking, we needed to see things for ourselves. And so I was glad we could go. And I also want, we don't want to be in the building when the teachers and the kids are in the building, because it introduces a new set of possible germs into the building. But I want the teachers to know that we feel safe in the building too. So, so we were there today. But more importantly, Michelle Horrigan and I want to make a statement about our gratitude to all the people who've been doing a lot of work. So I'm going to read the whole thing, but a famous quote by Helen Keller states, "Alone, we can do a little, but together we can do so much." The Hamilton Wenham School Committee would like to take this opportunity to thank all who have tirelessly worked to open this unprecedented school year. Our dedicated teachers, staff, administration have shown the importance of working collaboratively to serve the children of our district. We are grateful for their dedication to public education and to the children of Hamilton Wenham. Additionally, it's been said that it takes a village or a hamlet, if you live in this community, to raise our kids. Our school staff and faculty are an important part of the adults that make up our community of caring. And as we continue to walk through this difficult time, we need to hold each other up so that we can all work to raise our children and to show them the best that our community has to offer. They are watching us. Maya Angelou has said, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel. Our teachers and staff make us at the school committee feel thankful to have such caring professionals in our village and hamlet. So if you would like to thank the Hamilton Wenham teachers, this would be the opportunity to do that. So thank you very much for everything you have done to get us ready. Michelle Horrigan had to do some serious math to get her assignment.
It's called a lot of days, 9,183 days and counting of Horgan children in the school district. So thank you, teachers.
Yeah, I tried to come up with the name of every teacher that still worked in the district.
You guys are
A lot of teachers.
I was just proud of my sparkly stars. So yeah.
My daughter
sparkly.
thanked everyone.
And
in
I
the
love
school.
it, Peter. Thank you.
She thanked
So-
all the teachers in school, and including the custodian,
Exactly. Thank you, Phil Coleman.
Mr. Coleman,
So we want to thank you all.
music teachers, art teachers, academic teachers.
Everybody's important. And I wanted to say that I noticed that there was like a little snack table at Winthrop that was being provided by the principal. And she wanted you all to know that she is doing everything to try and make your workplace someplace that you want to come to. And we want to make this a community that supports you. So that is our goal, is to try and make people remember that we're all doing our best and we're trying to build a community that cares for each other and is grateful, is thankful, and we try and build each other up instead of tear each other down. So thank you for your assistance, Michelle Horrigan. It was very inspirational. All right, so the other thing I need to say is, we were hoping to have a retreat in 2 weeks. However, Dorothy Presser is not available. So Mary Beth and I thought, oh, we'll just switch the meetings around. We can have Dorothy the first Wednesday. Originally, she said she could do it, but now she's told me, well, I had penciled in somebody else, but they hadn't got back to me. So I thought we weren't doing it, but then now they are. So we need to talk about if we want to have a retreat on September 28th, which also happens to be Yom Kippur. Or if we still want to do that switcheroo thing and have a meeting either on Saturday morning, October the 3rd, October the 5th, or October the 6th for retreats. So we don't have to make that decision tonight, but I'm going to put out a poll. So if you could please respond to it so that we can make that decision.
Would it be in person or like this?
My recommendation, if it's possible to do it in person, I think that may be more impactful.
Yeah.
That's what we originally said.
Yeah, I think so. That's why the only thing I'll say is I have to travel for work quite a bit and I'll be physically out of this area. So if we're going to do it in person, we do need to start a date sooner because I actually have to leave the area for work.
Okay. Are you available?
And what are we looking at on the agenda for this workshop?
So we would be talking protocols, just some sort of like workflow things, like who's going to do what, and a little bit of calendar planning, because we still have like the turf field thing going on, and we still have the master plan thing that we had in the, what do you call that, the capital budget. So we've got some of that. And then we also need to talk about some goal things, like Mary Beth needs to get a set of goals. We need to get a set of goals. I
think the capital policy subcommittee needs a charge, right? I mean, we've been talking about meeting and getting organized on that.
Yeah, and that too. So, just sort of all of those things. But we thought having Dorothy was sort of essential for a couple of reasons. She knows us and has worked with us, and we trust her. And two, she already has like a program set up that she can sort of guide us through some of those things quickly. So,
and the charges wouldn't be on a workshop. That should be in the individual
No,
working
but I
group.
think
Should be. We need to vote those in at some point. And I do know that some of the working groups don't have minutes. Even like policy doesn't have minutes since March approved that are up on the website. So we need to get updated on that stuff.
Yep, they're approved. They're just not in Janelle's hands. So, okay. So I just want you to know, I will put out that survey so that we can pick a date. All right. Does that put us to the end?
No.
Executive session now?
Oh.
There's warrants, consent.
We have to do.
Oh, yeah, consent agenda. Okay.
And
What
also
about items for the next meeting?
reports.
You can just email them to me, Peter.
Well, I have emailed them and I keep getting
I know, but we're-
pushed off.
But I told you, we are going to have a finance report from Vinny, second meeting of October.
I've been asking for weeks now about the cost of what we're spending for contractors, the current number of custodians. I've heard through the grapevine we're down 3 custodians now,
Yep, we
and I
will be
just
talking.
feel like I keep getting pushed off.
We
and I'm
will
getting-
be talking about custodians at the next meeting.
All right, it's on the record now. We'll talk about the cost of contractors, the number of
Not at
custodians.
the next meeting. We will talk
And
about if
I
we,
also
kind
have a
of report
question,
we
how they
need
can
to-
change the metrics without us voting on it. I thought we voted on a metric and now they changed the metrics. I thought we should revote that.
it was my thought that we asked the Board of Health to create a metric and that we would follow it because the Board of Health has their sort of more in touch with the day to day. Dana, do you want to say something? And then Mary Beth Ting will recognize you again.
And then I'd like to finish my point.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe I'm gonna just reiterate what Michelle Bailey just said, which is that we, the school committee and the district asked the Board of Health to create metrics for us to use in our decision-making process. And we did vote that we would ask them to do that and that we did look at the metrics, and they have adjusted the metrics. So, you know, we enlisted them to do that. And I feel like it's really wise that they are continuing to take that seriously and they're adjusting the metrics on that. I don't know, does that answer? Mary Beth, maybe you have more answers for that. But
Another way I might frame that is that the committee voted to have the COVID response team make decisions based on the metrics that the Board of Health creates, right? The committee did not vote in a particular set of metrics. And what is happening as you know, we want to see, right, as we implement things and we see what works well and what doesn't, we're continuing to refine that. And the boards of health are continuing to refine their work, but the committee never actually voted in a specific set of metrics. They voted that the COVID response team would refer to the metrics created by the boards of health when making the decision. Does that make sense, Dana?
Mrs. Mary Beth Ting, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I agree very much with everything that's been said. I will say that as there was a lot of heat coming toward the boards of health, I was not able to review all of the different meetings, but I was able to review the school committee meeting on 8/14, which was the one in which the initial attempt at designing them was submitted for your consideration. And there was a lot of deserved critical input about the metrics at that point in time. And so it went back to the drawing board and things were adjusted. I will say that in that meeting, you can listen to it and you can hear from your own, at least one of your own members, that there was a real desire for more conservative metrics. And so that didn't come just from the Board of Health. All of the meetings that were held were public Zoom meetings. And so the members of the public were invited to come and give their thoughts about how this should be designed, because this was starting from a completely blank slate. And, you know, in the process, things came out from DESE later on. So, you know, the boards of health have a lot of jurisdiction about public health policy, but not over the schools. Just so you're all aware, the boards of health do inspect the kitchens in all the schools to be sure that they're in compliance with, you know, food regulations, but that's about it. So what was provided to the school committee was guidance upon request. And what the committee decided to do with that guidance, even the guidance that you have before you now, remains at the discretion of the school committee. Thank you.
And what the school committee has said is that the COVID response team will be the way that the school committee will make that decision.
Or that Mary Beth will make that decision
Based on
on the advice that she seeks from the COVID response team. It's all your fault, Mary Beth, just so we're clear on that. So
Should we
Mary Beth
revisit?
Daniels. Okay. So let's, does anybody want to pull an item from the consent agenda?
Are we still talking about items for next meeting?
No, you're emailing those to me before next Wednesday.
I'd like to talk about the learning management system.
Okay.
For years, I've been asking for a learning management system, and we've just lost years and now months.
Sure.
And we should be.
Peter.
We know we're going to have. We know we're going to go remote. We should be talking about implementing our own district learning management system.
Great. Put it in an email. Keep track of it.
I've been talking about it for weeks.
I
don't
know.
if I'll write it in an email, but I will.
Thank you. Okay. Consent agenda, anything to pull? Okay. Dana, make a motion so that We
I
approve.
move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approve the consent agenda as listed on the agenda, and no changes shall be made.
Sounds good.
Second.
Anna seconded, and a vote now.
Yes, I'm finally caught up with all the meeting minutes. I'm not behind anymore. Yes.
Michelle Horrigan,
Yes.
Stacy Metternich,
Abstain. I didn't read them, so I don't want to vote.
David,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Dana, did I call you?
Yes.
Yes. And Michelle Bailey, yes. So that's unanimous. Okay, now we're ready to go.
It's actually six.
No, that's six.
It's six. It's, go ahead,
Six, one
Stacy.
abstain.
Oh,
Six.
sorry. Thank you for, yeah, thank you, Stacy. Yeah, unanimously 6, 1 abstain. Does anybody have anything to report from committees? I don't. Negotiations
Well,
are in executive session.
So can I ask a procedural question then about, so if we're not going to do the charge for policy for capital at the retreat and we haven't set a meeting, should I just try to get a meeting organized of that group to set the charge?
Sure.
I mean, I don't mind doing that, but at this point we technically don't have a charge or a chair. So I don't want to break a rule that I'm unaware of, but that group needs, if we need to meet to set the charge, then we have to get a meeting.
Three of you figure it out.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. Policy gave us their report. We voted on their stuff, and the other one hasn't met. So, any updates from the towns or anything? We're good. Okay, we're good. Okay.
Well, I just met with the FinCom Valerie McCormick last night, just to touch base, and Vinny and Mary Beth have agreed or want to meet with them. So in October, we've set up some meetings for them. So I'll confirm with them later on.
Anna?
The Hamilton Board of Selectmen have met, and coming down the pipe will be 2 exciting initiatives. Both towns are considering starting a human rights commission. And
Yep.
so the school committee has sort of been formally notified that there'll be potentially a student representative on each, and also a call for a school committee representative on each if those measures pass. So it's been a development, and I believe that Joe forwarded you and Mary Beth the draft document to look at before it gets. So it's not official, but it's officially in the pipeline now.
Yeah. Also, Joe has asked for someone to sit on a capital committee. I think that's going to be Tom, right?
That's going to be Tom, correct?
Yeah. We don't need a school committee member, or do we?
Right now, I think where they are, Tom should be able to provide the information they need.
All right. So then if we need a committee member later, we can do that. Okay. All right. So
Do we have a legislative person on any of the committees?
So
Because stuff has come out recently that we want to reach out, whether it be Mary Beth Banyos talking to a representative or a senator to make sure that we're heard as a school district?
it's usually gone through policy, but
Mhm.
I'm usually been through policy. So we can do that, or I can do it. I don't care.
I mean, so I'm happy to take on some of those things, and to the Hamilton Capital Committee too, if there is a need for that. I would be more than happy to take on that as well, just sort of that legislative arm. But I agree, Stacey, I think we should have presence, but I think we should be clear about who it is, so it's not multiple of us. So I don't know if that's.
Let me call them. I'll call them, especially I want to talk to them about the enrollment issue with so many.
Can I ask, has there been a standing meeting with the school committee and our state legislatures? If not, when we go to our retreat and do a work plan, we should probably move to have set meetings where we ask folks to come in and address the committee.
Yeah, there used to be.
Yeah, we haven't had that in a couple of years.
We had a time where we used to have a breakfast, and it would be like the school committee and the board of selectmen and everybody. And it didn't happen for a long time. And then in the spring, we did do a Zoom with everybody. It was a good experience, but we got bad news. So it was a good call, but it was bad. So we should try and yes, let's put that in the retreat. So in the work plan. All right. Then I'm going to move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy in regards to negotiations with the Hamilton Wenham Education Association, because having it in open session would be to the detriment of our bargaining position. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Dana. We'll vote by roll call. We will not return to open session. Anna,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Michelle Bailey, yes. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. We were glad to see you here. See you back sometime in the future. There was a link sent just before the meeting for an executive session. So Mary Beth Banyos is going to close this meeting entirely. It's going to go away and she'll open the next meeting.